I spent 8 years building our family restaurant empire, working 70-hour weeks while my brother partied through college. But when Dad retired, he handed the keys to Alex with one cruel sentence that would change everything. Business is a man's world, Jennifer. You wouldn't understand. If you've ever worked twice as hard only to be passed over for someone less qualified, drop a comment below and smash that like button. You're going to love how this story ends. My name is Jennifer Martinez, and I'm 28 years old. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how my father's sexist decision to give our family restaurant chain to my unqualified brother led to the most devastating betrayal and the most satisfying comeback you've ever heard. By the end of this story, my brother would be begging me for a job while our family empire crumbled, but not before I'd experienced losses that would break most people. This isn't just a revenge story. It's a story about losing everything, finding yourself in the wreckage, and building something better than anyone thought possible. Growing up in San Antonio, Texas, our family owned 3 successful Mexican restaurants called Casa Martinez. My great-grandfather started the first location in 1952, and it had been passed down through generations of Martinez men. My father, Roberto Martinez, always made it clear that this tradition would continue with my younger brother Alex, despite the fact that I was the one who lived and breathed the restaurant business from the age of 12. The irony is that I was the favorite child for the first 16 years of my life. Dad would take me to the restaurants on weekends, teaching me to count inventory and showing me off to suppliers as my little business partner. When customers complimented the food, he'd call me over and say, "Jennifer here knows every recipe by heart. She's going to run this place someday." Those words were like music to my ears. I believed them completely. While other kids spent their summers at camps or hanging out with friends, I was in the kitchen learning every recipe from my grandmother Elena. She taught me the secret to our famous mole sauce, the exact blend of spices that made our carnitas legendary, and the family techniques that had been guarded for 3 generations. Alex, on the other hand, would rather play video games or go out with friends than learn anything about the business. I remember being 15 and working the dinner rush on a Friday night when we were short-staffed. I moved seamlessly between taking orders, expediting food, and helping in the kitchen, while Alex sat at the bar doing homework he'd procrastinated on all week. Customers would often compliment my father on how hardworking and knowledgeable I was about every dish we served. His response filled me with pride. "That's my Jennifer. She's going to take this business to the next level someday." But everything changed when I turned 16 and Alex turned 14. Suddenly, Dad's language shifted from "Jennifer will run this place" to "Jennifer's a good helper, but Alex will take over when he's ready." At first, I thought it was just because Alex was getting older and needed encouragement. I never imagined it was because my father had decided that my gender disqualified me from the future I'd been promised my entire childhood. The inequality became more obvious as we got older. When I graduated high school as valedictorian with a full scholarship to UT Austin for business, my father's reaction was lukewarm. "That's nice, Mija, but remember, your real place is here with the family." When Alex barely graduated with a 2.3 GPA and got into community college, Dad threw him a huge party and announced proudly to everyone that his son was going to study business to prepare for taking over Casa Martinez. I spent my college years driving back to San Antonio every weekend to work at the restaurants. While my classmates were enjoying college parties and spring break trips, I was analyzing our profit margins, updating our inventory systems, and learning advanced accounting to help streamline our operations. I wrote my senior thesis on restaurant chain expansion, using Casa Martinez as my case study. My professors were impressed enough to recommend me for graduate programs in business administration. Alex, meanwhile, barely attended his community college classes and spent most of his time partying. When he did show up at the restaurants, he'd spend his shifts flirting with servers and avoiding any real work. Customers complained about his attitude, but Dad always defended him. "He's just young. He'll mature into the role." The first devastating blow came during my senior year of college. I had been accepted to Harvard Business School with a partial scholarship, a dream I'd worked toward my entire life. When I told my parents over dinner, expecting celebration, I was met with silence. "Harvard?" My father finally said. "That's in Boston." "Yes, Dad. It's one of the best business schools in the world. This could open incredible doors for Casa Martinez's expansion." "Absolutely not. he said firmly. Your place is here. I need you to come back full-time after graduation to help Alex learn the business. But Dad, you always said I was going to take this business to the next level. Harvard would give me the tools to do exactly that. His expression hardened. I said you'd help take it to the next level. Alex will be running things. You can learn everything you need to know right here. That night, I cried myself to sleep, but I told myself it was just a misunderstanding. Surely, once Dad saw how much I could contribute with my business degree, he'd recognize my potential and change his mind about Harvard. I was so naive. After graduating college, I came back to work full-time at Casa Martinez. I threw myself into the business with incredible dedication, working 70-hour weeks without complaint. I redesigned our marketing strategy, implemented new point-of-sale systems, and established relationships with local suppliers that cut our food costs by 15%. I created employee training programs that reduced turnover and improved service quality across all 3 locations. For 2 wonderful years, I thought I was proving myself. The numbers spoke for themselves. In the 2 years after I joined full-time, our revenue increased by 40%. Customer satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. Food critics started writing glowing reviews about Casa Martinez, calling us San Antonio's hidden gem and praising our authentic flavors and exceptional service. I was the one coordinating with reviewers, managing our social media presence, and ensuring quality control across all locations. During this time, I fell in love with David Chen, a brilliant chef I met at a food industry conference. David had trained at the Culinary Institute of America and was working toward opening his own restaurant. We talked for hours about our shared passion for food, our dreams of building something meaningful together, and our vision for elevating Mexican cuisine to fine dining status while maintaining its authentic roots. David proposed after a year of dating, and I was ecstatic. Finally, everything was coming together. The business I'd devoted my life to building, and a partner who shared my dreams and understood my passion. When I told my parents about the engagement, I expected joy. Instead, I got a lecture. Jennifer, my mother said carefully, you know that once you're married and have children, you won't be able to work those long hours anymore. It's only natural that Alex should start taking more responsibility now. Mom, David and I both want to work in the restaurant industry. We've even talked about him coming to work at Casa Martinez as head chef. My father's expression darkened. We don't need an outsider in our kitchen. Our recipes are family secrets. David's not an outsider. He'll be family. He'll be your family. Alex is my heir. The word heir hit me like a physical blow. After everything I'd done, I was still just a helper in my father's eyes. But I pushed forward, planning a future where David and I would prove ourselves indispensable to Casa Martinez's success. David visited several times, impressing everyone with his culinary skills and respectful attitude. Even Alex seemed to like him. I started dreaming of the day when David and I would work side by side, taking Casa Martinez to heights my father never imagined. Then came the second devastating blow. 3 months before our wedding, David was offered a position as executive chef at a prestigious restaurant in New York City. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that would make his career. Come with me, he said when he told me about the offer. We can start our own restaurant together in New York. With your business skills and my culinary training, we could build something incredible. I can't leave Casa Martinez, I said automatically. This is my life's work. Jennifer, your father is never going to give you control of that business. You know that, right? He will, I insisted. Once he sees what we can accomplish together, once Alex proves he's not capable, Dad will realize I'm the right choice. David looked at me with such sadness. Baby, he's had 8 years to see what you can accomplish. You've increased their revenue by 40%. You've built relationships with every supplier and customer. You've created systems that keep the whole operation running. If that hasn't convinced him by now, nothing will. I can't give up on my family's business. I'm not asking you to give up on it. I'm asking you to choose us over a fantasy that your father is going to suddenly change his mind about your worth. The fight that followed was brutal. David accused me of choosing my family's approval over our future together. I accused him of not understanding the sacrifices I'd made and the loyalty I owed to Casa Martinez. We said things that couldn't be taken back. 2 weeks later, David took the job in New York. Our engagement ended with heartbreak and recriminations that left me feeling like I'd lost both my future and my best friend. I threw myself even deeper into Casa Martinez, working 80-hour weeks, telling myself that my sacrifice would be worth it. When Dad finally recognized my dedication and gave me the partnership I deserved. Meanwhile, Alex was finishing his associate's degree in business with mediocre grades. When he joined the company officially, Dad gave him the title of assistant manager and had me train him on everything I'd spent years perfecting. It was humiliating to watch Alex take credit for improvements I had implemented while I remained officially just a kitchen manager despite doing work far beyond that role. The third devastating blow came during what should have been my greatest triumph. A prestigious food magazine wanted to feature Casa Martinez in a major article about family restaurant dynasties in Texas. They sent a photographer and journalist to spend a week documenting our operations, interviewing staff, and understanding our family's story. During the interview, the journalist spent most of his time talking to me about our operational improvements, supplier relationships, and business strategies. He was clearly impressed by my knowledge and passion. When he asked about the future of Casa Martinez, I talked enthusiastically about expansion plans, menu innovations, and my vision for taking the brand statewide. "So you'll be taking over when your father retires?" he asked. "That's the plan," I said confidently, convinced that this article would finally force my father to publicly acknowledge my role in the business. When the magazine came out 2 months later, the article was everything I'd hoped for. Casa Martinez was featured prominently, with beautiful photos and glowing descriptions of our food and atmosphere. But when I read the article, my heart sank. The headline read, "Alex Martinez, the young entrepreneur carrying on a family legacy." Every quote I'd given was attributed to Alex. Every business strategy I'd explained was credited to him. The journalist had interviewed both of us, but the article presented Alex as the visionary behind our recent success, while I was mentioned only briefly as Alex's sister, who helps in the kitchen. When I confronted the journalist, he seemed genuinely confused. "I interviewed both of you," he said, "but your father called my editor personally to clarify that Alex was the one in charge and would be my primary source. He said you were just an employee who sometimes spoke out of turn." My father had literally erased me from my own story. That night, I went home to my empty apartment and cried for hours. David was building his career in New York. My future at Casa Martinez seemed increasingly hopeless. I was 26 years old, had sacrificed everything for a business that would never truly be mine, and had nothing to show for it but exhaustion and heartbreak. For the first time, I seriously considered leaving San Antonio altogether. Maybe David had been right. Maybe I was chasing a fantasy that would never come true. But then I remembered my grandmother Elena's words, "Mija, when someone tells you that you can't do something, you have two choices. You can believe them and prove them right, or you can prove them wrong so loudly that everyone else starts believing in you too." I decided to give Casa Martinez one more chance, but this time I would document everything I did so thoroughly that no one could erase my contributions again. I started keeping detailed records of every process I improved, every supplier relationship I built, every customer I personally developed relationships with. I documented which dishes were my grandmother's original recipes that I had modernized, which vendors gave us the best deals because of relationships I had cultivated, and which corporate clients trusted me personally to handle their events. For the next years, I poured my heart into building an undeniable case for my leadership of Casa Martinez. Every successful initiative was documented. Every relationship was carefully maintained. Every improvement was photographed and recorded. By year 6 of my post-college work at Casa Martinez, I was essentially running the business while Alex held the title. I handled all vendor negotiations, managed our finances, oversaw staff training, and maintained relationships with our most important customers. Dad would often introduce Alex as my successor at industry events, while I stood behind them having detailed conversations with suppliers and competitors. Who knew I was the one actually making decisions? The breaking point came during our annual family business planning meeting in December. I had prepared the most comprehensive presentation of my career about expanding to a 4th location, complete with market analysis, financial projections, and site recommendations. I had spent weeks researching locations, talking to real estate agents, and developing a detailed business plan that would increase our revenue by an estimated 30%. When I finished my presentation, the room was silent. Even Alex looked impressed. though he quickly tried to hide it. Dad reviewed my materials, asked several detailed questions that I answered confidently, and finally nodded slowly. This is very thorough work, Jennifer. Very professional. You've really outdone yourself this time. For a moment, my heart soared. After 6 years of being overlooked, after sacrificing Harvard, after losing David, after being erased from magazine articles, maybe this would finally be the moment when Dad recognized my contributions and began treating me as a real partner in the business. I'm impressed, Dad continued. This level of research and analysis is exactly what Casa Martinez needs to move forward. Thank you, Dad. I'm ready to take on the expansion project and, which is why, he interrupted, Alex will have such a solid foundation to work from when he takes over and starts making expansion decisions. Jennifer, this research will be very helpful for Alex when he's ready to expand. You've always been good at the detail work. The room spun around me. 3 weeks of work, reduced to detail work that would help my unqualified brother make decisions he had no business making. Then Alex spoke up, and his words destroyed whatever hope I had left. Actually, Dad, I think we should put the expansion plans on hold. I've been talking to some guys from my business program, and they think we should focus on updating our current locations instead of growing too fast. Maybe modernize the decor, simplify the menu, make it more appealing to younger customers. I watched in horror as Alex casually dismissed months of my work in favor of half-baked ideas from his community college classmates. Dad nodded approvingly. That's smart thinking, Alex. Growth for growth's sake isn't always the right strategy. I also think we should consider changing the name, Alex continued. Casa Martinez sounds kind of old-fashioned. Maybe something more modern, like Mex Fresh or Southwest Kitchen. He wanted to change the name that honored our great-grandfather who started with nothing and built something lasting. The name that represented 3 generations of family tradition and hard work. That's an interesting idea, Dad said. Very forward-thinking. I couldn't stay silent. Alex, you want to change the name of a restaurant chain that's been successful for 70 years because it sounds old-fashioned to your college friends? It's called market research, Jennifer. You wouldn't understand. Market research. From someone who had never read a market analysis or customer satisfaction survey in his life. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, before we make any drastic changes, maybe we should look at our actual customer data. Our surveys show that 85% of our customers specifically choose Casa Martinez because of our authentic family atmosphere and traditional recipes. Modernizing could alienate our core customer base. Alex waved dismissively. Those old customers are dying off anyway. We need to attract younger demographics. Our younger demographics love us too, I replied. Our social media engagement is highest among 25 to 35-year-olds who appreciate authentic cuisine. Jennifer, Dad said sharply, Alex will be making these decisions soon. You need to support his vision instead of questioning everything he says. That's when I realized the devastating truth. It didn't matter how much evidence I presented, how many successes I achieved, or how thoroughly I proved my competence. In my father's mind, I would always be the helper, and Alex would always be the heir, regardless of ability or effort. 6 months later, Dad announced he was ready to retire. At 65, he wanted to step back and spend more time with our mother, traveling and enjoying his golden years. He called a family meeting to discuss the transition plan. I arrived at the restaurant that evening with a carefully prepared portfolio of documentation showing every contribution I'd made to Casa Martinez over the past 8 years. Financial records proving the revenue increases I'd generated. Testimonials from suppliers and customers praising my professionalism and expertise. Awards and recognition the restaurants had received under my operational management. I was ready to make my final case for why I should inherit the business I'd devoted my adult life to building. Instead, I walked into a meeting where the decision had already been made without any input from me whatsoever. I've decided it's time to pass Casa Martinez to the next generation, Dad announced, standing at the head of our conference table with legal documents spread in front of him. Alex will take over as owner and CEO of all 3 locations. I felt the blood drain from my face. What about me? Dad looked genuinely confused by my question. What about you? I've been running this business for 6 years. I know every supplier, every customer, every process. I've increased revenue by over 60% since I started working here full-time. What role will I have in the new structure? Alex shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. Dad's expression hardened. Jennifer, you've been a valuable employee, and you'll continue to be valuable to Alex when he takes over. But business is a man's world. You wouldn't understand the pressures and responsibilities of ownership. Alex has been preparing for this his whole life. The casual sexism in his words hit me like a physical blow. In 2023, my own father was telling me that my gender disqualified me from running the business I had devoted my adult life to building. Preparing his whole life? I managed to ask. He barely shows up, Dad. Half our customers don't even know his name. He can't answer basic questions about our menu without asking me for help. That's enough, Dad said firmly. Alex is my son and the rightful heir to this business. You're a woman, Jennifer. Someday you'll get married and have children, and you'll understand that your real priority should be your family, not business ownership. Alex doesn't have those distractions. I had a chance to get married, I said quietly. I gave it up for this business. I gave up Harvard for this business. I've given up everything for this business, and you're telling me it was all worthless because I'm a woman? Don't be dramatic, Dad replied. You'll find another good man. Alex only gets one chance to carry on the family legacy. Alex finally spoke up, his voice weak and uncertain. Jen, maybe we could work something out where you stay on as general manager or something. I looked at my brother, this man who had coasted through life on privilege and expectations, while I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. In that moment, I realized that he wasn't just complicit in this decision. He was comfortable with it. He had watched me build this business and felt entitled to inherit my work simply because he was born male. No, I said quietly, standing up from the table. I won't be working for someone who doesn't know the difference between our mole rojo and mole poblano recipes. Dad's face flushed with anger. You're being dramatic, Jennifer. Alex will learn everything he needs to know. From who? I asked. I'm the one who knows everything, and I won't be here to teach him. Then maybe you'll finally grow up and stop acting like you're entitled to something that was never yours to begin with, Dad snapped. Those words shattered something inside me. 28 years of being his daughter, 8 years of devotion to his business. And in the end, I was just someone who felt entitled to something that was never mine. With that, I walked out of the conference room, out of the restaurant, and out of the family business that had been my life for 8 years. The next morning, I called in my resignation, not just from my position, but from the family business entirely. I had saved $180,000 over the years, living modestly and putting almost everything back into supporting my education and preparing for a future I thought would include partnership in Casa Martinez. Now, I was going to use that money for something much more satisfying. But first, I had to survive the darkest period of my life. The weeks following my resignation were brutal. I had defined myself by my work at Casa Martinez for so long that I didn't know who I was without it. I had no close friends. I'd spent all my social time with work colleagues or family. I had no romantic relationship. I'd sacrificed that for the business. I had no hobbies or interests outside of the restaurant industry. I was 28 years old with a college degree and significant savings, but I felt completely lost. The worst part was the family reaction. Instead of reaching out to ask if I was okay or trying to understand my perspective, my parents acted like I had betrayed them by quitting. My mother called crying, saying I was tearing the family apart and abandoning my responsibilities. Extended family members who had watched me work for years suddenly treated me like I was being unreasonable and selfish. Only my grandmother Elena, now 89 and living in a nursing home, seemed to understand. When I visited her and told her what had happened, she took my hands in her frail ones and said, Mija, I've been waiting 28 years for you to realize that you don't owe anyone your dreams, not even family. But Abuela, what if I can't succeed on my own? What if Dad was right that I don't understand business? She laughed, a sound that was still strong despite her age. Child, you've been running that business for years while they took credit. The only thing you don't understand is how to take credit for your own work. That conversation gave me the courage to start planning my next move, but I was still scared. Starting my own restaurant would mean competing directly with my family, burning bridges that could never be rebuilt. It would mean risking my life savings on a venture that might fail. It would mean admitting that the future I'd planned for 20 years was never going to happen. I spent 2 months in what I can only describe as paralysis. I'd wake up every morning intending to start looking for restaurant locations, then spend the day scrolling through job listings for regular business positions instead. I'd tell myself that maybe I should just get a normal job, work for someone else's company, and give up on the restaurant industry entirely. During this time, I started getting reports about Casa Martinez through mutual friends. Alex was struggling exactly as I'd predicted, but rather than feeling satisfied, I felt sad. These restaurants had been my babies. Watching them decline felt like watching something I loved being destroyed. The first crisis came 3 weeks after I left, when our primary meat supplier called to renegotiate our contract. I had maintained that relationship personally for 6 years, and the supplier had given us preferred pricing because of our loyalty and payment history. When Alex tried to handle the negotiation, he not only failed to maintain our discount, but actually agreed to a 20% price increase because he didn't understand the market rates or our leverage as a long-term customer. The second crisis was staffing. 3 of our best servers and 2 kitchen staff members quit within a month of my departure. These weren't people I recruited, they left because they were frustrated with Alex's management style and his tendency to contradict procedures they had been following successfully for years. The third crisis was quality control. Without me there to ensure consistency, food quality became erratic. Alex didn't know the exact preparation methods for several key dishes, and his attempts to improve my grandmother's recipes resulted in customers complaining that their favorite meals tasted different. By month 2, Casa Martinez was receiving its first negative reviews in years. Customers complained about slow service, inconsistent food quality, and a general decline in the atmosphere that had made the restaurant special. Part of me wanted to call my father and say, "I told you so." Part of me wanted to go back and fix everything, to save the business I'd spent so many years building. But a bigger part of me realized that Casa Martinez's problems weren't my responsibility anymore. My grandmother Elena had been right. I didn't owe anyone my dreams, not even family. Finally, 3 months after leaving Casa Martinez, I found the courage to start building my own future. I spent the next month conducting what I called my liberation research. I drove around San Antonio looking for the perfect location for my own restaurant. I wanted somewhere visible, accessible, and ideally positioned to compete directly with Casa Martinez's customer base. I found it in a former Italian restaurant space on the River Walk, just 8 blocks from our downtown Casa Martinez location. The space was larger than any of our family restaurants, with a beautiful patio overlooking the water and enough square footage for a full bar, expanded kitchen, and private dining room for events. The previous owners had failed not because of location or market conditions, but because of poor management and inconsistent food quality problems I knew how to solve. Using my savings as a down payment, I secured financing for Elena's Kitchen, named after my grandmother, who had taught me everything I knew about authentic Mexican cuisine. The name choice was deliberate. Elena had always told me that cooking was an act of love, and that the secret ingredient in any great dish was the care and passion of the person preparing it. For the first time in months, I woke up every morning excited about the day ahead. I was finally building something that would be entirely mine. But the road to opening Elena's Kitchen was harder than I had anticipated. Without the family name recognition, I struggled to get meetings with suppliers who had worked with Casa Martinez for years. Some vendors who had given me preferential treatment when I represented a multi-location chain were less accommodating when I was just another startup restaurant. The permitting process was a nightmare of bureaucracy and delays. The restaurant space needed more renovation than I had initially budgeted for. Equipment costs were higher than expected. My carefully planned opening timeline slipped from 3 months to 6 months, then to 8 months. By month 6, I was burning through money faster than I had planned and beginning to panic. My savings were dwindling, and I hadn't served a single customer yet. I started to wonder if my father had been right about my ability to handle business ownership. The lowest point came when my contractor discovered significant plumbing issues that would require tearing up the entire kitchen floor and rebuilding the drainage system. The additional cost was $35,000, money I didn't have. I sat in my empty restaurant space, surrounded by half-finished construction, and cried harder than I had since leaving Casa Martinez. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I should have just found a job working for someone else and accepted that entrepreneurship wasn't for me. But then I remembered something David had said during one of our fights before he moved to New York. "Jennifer, you have more business sense in your little finger than most entrepreneurs have in their entire bodies. The only thing holding you back is your need for other people's approval." He was right. I had been so focused on proving myself to my family that I had never learned to trust my own instincts and abilities. I took out a personal loan against my car and my savings to cover the plumbing costs. It was terrifying to go that deep into debt, but I knew Elena's kitchen was going to succeed. I could feel it. The next few months were a blur of 16-hour days, but every moment was exciting rather than exhausting, because I was finally building something that would be mine. I hired Maria Santos, a talented chef who had trained at the Culinary Institute of America, as my head chef. Together, we created a menu that honored traditional Mexican cuisine while incorporating modern techniques and presentation. For front-of-house management, I hired Carlos Rivera, who had managed successful restaurants in Austin and understood both customer service excellence and efficient operations. Carlos helped me design service systems that could handle everything from casual dinners to large corporate events seamlessly. I also invested in technology that Casa Martinez had never prioritized. Elena's kitchen had a modern point-of-sale system, online reservation capabilities, and a comprehensive customer relationship management system that allowed us to track preferences and provide personalized service. 10 months after leaving Casa Martinez, I opened Elena's kitchen with a soft opening for friends, former colleagues, and selected community members. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Guests raved about the food quality, the attentive service, and the beautiful atmosphere. Several food bloggers and local influencers posted glowing reviews on social media. The grand opening 2 weeks later was magical. We had a line of customers waiting outside before we even opened, and every table was booked for the entire evening. Local news covered the opening, interviewing customers who praised everything from the innovative menu to the exceptional customer service. But the real validation came when I saw familiar faces in the crowd, customers who had been regulars at Casa Martinez for years, now celebrating my success. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had brought her family to Casa Martinez every Sunday for a decade, hugged me and said, "Mija, this is what Casa Martinez used to feel like before everything changed." What I didn't expect was how quickly word would spread throughout San Antonio's restaurant community. Within a month, Elena's kitchen was being mentioned in the same conversations as the city's most respected dining establishments. Food critics from local newspapers and magazines came to review us, and every review was glowing. More importantly, our customer base was growing rapidly through word-of-mouth recommendations. People weren't just coming once, they were becoming regulars, bringing friends and family, and booking private events. Our reservation system was booked 2 weeks in advance within 6 months of opening. The financial turnaround was dramatic. By month 6, Elena's kitchen was profitable. By month 8, we were generating more revenue than any single Casa Martinez location, despite being open for less than a year, compared to their decades of operation. Meanwhile, Casa Martinez was struggling more visibly. Alex had implemented several of his modernization ideas, alienating longtime customers without attracting enough new ones to compensate for the losses. The simplified menu had eliminated several signature dishes that customers loved. The updated decor felt generic and had lost the warm, family atmosphere that had made Casa Martinez special. The most satisfying part wasn't just Elena's kitchen's success, it was seeing how many Casa Martinez customers were discovering us and making the switch. San Antonio's Mexican food scene is competitive, but loyalty is strong when restaurants maintain quality and service. As Casa Martinez's standards slipped, those loyal customers began looking for alternatives. They found us. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had celebrated every family milestone at Casa Martinez for 15 years, booked her daughter's quinceañera at Elena's kitchen after trying our catering services. The Hernandez family, who had been weekly regulars at Casa Martinez's downtown location, became Elena's kitchen regulars after experiencing our Sunday brunch. Corporate clients who had used Casa Martinez for business events started booking with us instead. The quality difference was significant, but more importantly, our service was reliable. When companies booked events with Elena's kitchen, they knew exactly what they would get: perfect food, attentive service, and seamless execution. The breakthrough moment came during Elena's kitchen's first anniversary celebration. We were hosting a large community event featuring live music, special menus, and celebration cocktails. The event was covered by local media and attended by hundreds of customers, suppliers, and community leaders. I was moving through the crowd, thanking guests and enjoying the celebration of everything we had built, when I spotted a familiar figure near the bar, Alex. He was standing with a woman I didn't recognize, holding a drink and looking around the restaurant with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It wasn't the confident, entitled look he had worn throughout our childhood and our years working together. It was the look of someone who was realizing exactly what he had lost. I watched him for several minutes before approaching. He noticed me coming and straightened up, trying to compose himself into the casual confidence he had always projected. "Jennifer," he said, his voice uncertain. "Wow, this place is incredible." "Thank you," I replied evenly. "I'm glad you're enjoying the anniversary celebration." "The food is amazing," the woman with him added. "Alex told me his family owns restaurants too, but honestly, this is the best Mexican food I've ever had." Alex's face flushed red. "Jennifer, this is Michelle, my girlfriend." "Michelle, this is my sister Jennifer. She used to work at our family restaurants." The casual dismissal of my 8 years of work as just used to work might have hurt a year earlier. Now, it just confirmed that Alex still didn't understand what he had lost when I left. "Actually," I said with a smile, "I built most of the systems and relationships that made Casa Martinez successful. Now I own Elena's kitchen." Michelle's eyes widened. "You own this? All of this?" "Yes, and we're actually looking at opening a second location next year." Alex shifted uncomfortably. "Business seems to be going well." "Very well," I agreed. "We're doing about $3.2 million in annual revenue in our first year." "How are things at Casa Martinez?" The question hung in the air. Alex took a long sip of his drink before answering. "Things are challenging. The restaurant business is harder than I expected." I nearly laughed at the understatement. From what I had heard through industry connections, Casa Martinez was barely breaking even, had lost most of their corporate catering clients, and was struggling with staff retention and quality control issues. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said diplomatically. "Running restaurants requires a lot of attention to detail and relationship management." "Actually," Alex said, his voice dropping lower, "I was wondering if we could talk sometime. Maybe get coffee. I have some questions about business strategy." There it was, the moment I had been unconsciously waiting for. My brother, who had inherited everything I had built, asking me for advice because he couldn't manage what had been handed to him. "I'm pretty busy these days," I said, "but you could always submit a formal consultation request through our website. We do offer restaurant consulting services for struggling establishments." Alex's face went through several expressions: surprise, embarrassment, and finally resignation. "Right, of course." As they prepared to leave, Michelle turned back to me. "Seriously, congratulations on all this success. It's inspiring to see a woman building something so amazing." After they left, I stood in the middle of my thriving restaurant, surrounded by happy customers, satisfied employees, and the tangible success of everything I had built independently. The contrast between Elena's kitchen's bustling energy and Alex's uncomfortable defeat was satisfying, but it wasn't the complete victory I had imagined. The real test was still coming. 3 months later, I received the phone call I had been expecting and dreading for a long time. "Jennifer, it's Dad." I hadn't spoken to my father since the day I walked out of Casa Martinez, almost 2 years earlier. His voice sounded older, tired in a way I had never heard before. "Hello, Dad. I was wondering if we could meet. To talk." "About what?" A long pause. "About business. About family. About mistakes I think I might have made." We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, away from both Casa Martinez and Elena's kitchen. Dad looked older than I remembered, with more gray in his hair and lines around his eyes that suggested stress and sleepless nights. "I've been watching what you've built," he said after we ordered coffee. "Elena's kitchen. It's impressive." "Thank you. I hear you're considering a second location." "We are," I confirmed. "There's strong demand for expansion." He nodded slowly. "Alex is. He's struggling, Jennifer. Casa Martinez is not doing well." I waited for him to continue, but part of me felt no satisfaction in hearing this confirmation of what I had already known. These restaurants had been my life's work too. Their failure felt like watching something I loved being destroyed. "I think I made a mistake," he said finally. "I think I let tradition and old ideas cloud my judgment about what was best for the business." It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from my father, but it still wasn't a real acknowledgement of what he had done. What do you want from me, Dad? I was hoping maybe we could work together somehow, combine our businesses. You obviously know how to run successful restaurants, and Casa Martinez has brand recognition and history. I stared at him across the table. After everything, after dismissing my contributions, after giving away my work to my unqualified brother, after telling me that business was a man's world, he wanted me to bail out the business that should have been mine in the first place. You want me to save Casa Martinez, I said. I want us to be a family again, he replied. I want to fix what I broke. What you broke wasn't just business, Dad. What you broke was trust. What you broke was the relationship between a father and daughter who devoted 8 years of her life to something she thought would be her future. His eyes filled with tears. I know I was wrong. Do you know why you were wrong? I asked. Or do you just know that the consequences turned out badly for you? He was quiet for a long time. I was wrong because I let old ideas about gender and tradition override everything you had proven about your abilities. I was wrong because I gave Alex something he hadn't earned and took away something you had built. I was wrong because I taught my son that he was entitled to his sister's work just because he was born male. It was more accountability than I had expected from him, but I still felt hollow inside. Where had this understanding been 2 years ago, 5 years ago? When I was 16 and he started changing his language from Jennifer will run this place to Jennifer's a good helper. And what about now? I asked. If I agreed to help Casa Martinez, what would that look like? You would be in charge, he said immediately. Complete operational control. Alex would work for you, not the other way around. I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. No, Jennifer, no, Dad. I already have a successful business. I don't need Casa Martinez, and I don't need to clean up the mess that was created when you chose tradition over competence. But we're family. Yes, we are. And family means celebrating each other's successes, not just asking for help when you need something. You didn't celebrate when I graduated as valedictorian. You didn't celebrate when I increased Casa Martinez's revenue by 60%. You didn't even acknowledge my contributions when you handed the business to Alex. But now that I've built something successful without you, now you want to talk about family? He had no answer for that. I'm willing to rebuild our relationship, Dad, but not our business relationship. Elena's kitchen is mine. What I've built is mine, and I'm not giving it up or sharing it to fix mistakes I didn't make. We finished our coffee in relative silence. As we were leaving, Dad asked one more question. What should Alex do? About Casa Martinez? I considered the question seriously. Despite everything, Alex was still my brother, and I didn't want to see him fail just for the sake of revenge. More importantly, I realized that my anger wasn't really with Alex, it was with the system that had taught him he was entitled to my work. He should sell, I said. Casa Martinez has brand value and real estate value. If he sells now, he can get out with enough money to start over doing something he's actually good at. If he waits much longer, he'll just lose more money trying to run a business he doesn't understand. And what about the family legacy? 3 generations of Martinez tradition? Dad, the family legacy isn't a name on a restaurant. It's the values grandmother Elena taught us about hard work, integrity, and treating people with respect. Those values live in Elena's kitchen now, not in whatever Casa Martinez has become. That conversation marked the beginning of a slow, difficult process of rebuilding my relationship with my father. It wasn't immediate forgiveness. The wounds were too deep for that, but it was the start of something more honest than what we'd had before. 6 months later, Alex took my advice. Casa Martinez was sold to a restaurant group that specialized in revitalizing struggling establishments. The new owners kept the name and some of the traditional recipes, but completely overhauled the operations and management. Alex used his proceeds to go back to school for graphic design, something he had always been interested in but never pursued because he was expected to inherit the family business. Removing the pressure of running restaurants allowed Alex to find his actual talents and interests. The first time we talked after the sale, Alex was different. The entitled confidence was gone, replaced by something that seemed more genuine. I owe you an apology, he said when he called me. I knew I wasn't qualified to run Casa Martinez, but I let Dad's expectations and my own ego convince me that I deserved it anyway. Alex, no, let me finish. I watched you work 70-hour weeks for years. I saw how much you knew about every aspect of the business. I knew the customers trusted you more than they trusted me, but I told myself that I would figure it out because I was supposed to inherit it. He paused, his voice getting quieter. I never thanked you for all the times you covered for me, or made me look good in front of Dad, or fix problems I created. I just accepted it as my due. I'm sorry, Jennifer. I'm really sorry. It was the first time Alex had ever acknowledged the inequality in how we'd been treated, and the first time he'd taken responsibility for his part in perpetuating it. I'm sorry too, I said. I'm sorry we were both trapped in a system that pitted us against each other instead of allowing us to support each other. As for Elena's Kitchen, we opened our second location 6 months later in the trendy Pearl District, targeting the area's young professionals and upscale dining market. This location featured an expanded bar program with craft cocktails and an extensive selection of premium tequilas and mezcals. The success continued to build. By the end of our second year, Elena's Kitchen was a 2-location restaurant group generating $5.8 million in annual revenue. We employed 120 people, had won several local business awards, and were being recognized as one of San Antonio's most successful restaurant companies. But the real satisfaction came from the relationships I was building with my team. Unlike at Casa Martinez, where I had always felt like I was fighting for recognition and respect, at Elena's Kitchen, I was creating a culture where everyone's contributions were valued and acknowledged. Maria Santos, my head chef, had become my partner in developing new dishes and seasonal menus. Carlos Rivera was now general manager of both locations and was instrumental in training new staff. I promoted from within whenever possible, recognizing that investing in people's growth created loyalty and excellence that couldn't be bought. The day that changed everything came during our 3rd-year anniversary celebration. Elena's Kitchen had become a San Antonio institution, regularly featured in food magazines and recommended by food critics. The anniversary event was huge, a 3-day celebration with special menus, live music, and appearances by local celebrities. On the final night of the celebration, I was standing in the Pearl District location, watching the crowd of happy customers, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see David Chen. My heart stopped. I hadn't seen him since our painful breakup 4 years earlier, though I had followed his career from a distance. He had become executive chef at one of New York's most prestigious restaurants and had been featured in several national food magazines. "Hello, Jennifer," he said, his voice soft and uncertain. "David, what are you doing here?" "I'm in town for a food festival. I heard about Elena's Kitchen from colleagues in New York. They told me I had to try it." He looked around the bustling restaurant. "I didn't know it was yours until I saw your name on the wall." We stood there awkwardly for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. "Congratulations," he said finally. "This is everything we used to dream about building together." "Thank you," I replied, not sure what else to say. "I heard about what happened with Casa Martinez. I'm sorry. I know how much that business meant to you." "It's okay. It worked out for the best." He smiled sadly. "You were always stronger than you gave yourself credit for. I should have supported your decision to stay and fight for what you believed in, instead of asking you to run away with me. David, you were trying to protect me from a situation that was never going to change. You were probably right, maybe. But I should have been patient enough to let you figure that out on your own timeline, not mine." We talked for another hour, catching up on the years we'd missed, sharing stories about our respective journeys in the restaurant industry. It was comfortable in a way I hadn't expected, though tinged with the sadness of what might have been. As the evening was winding down, David hesitated before speaking. "I know this might be presumptuous, but I'm thinking about leaving New York. I've learned everything I can there, and I'm ready for a new challenge. Oh, I was wondering, would you ever consider hiring a partner? Someone who could help you expand Elena's Kitchen beyond San Antonio?" I looked at him. This man who had loved me enough to ask me to leave everything behind, who had understood my potential before I understood it myself, who had been willing to build a future with me when I was too afraid to leave my past. "I don't know," I said honestly. "A lot has changed." "I know. I've changed too. These years in New York taught me that professional success doesn't mean much if you don't have people you care about to share it with. David, I'm not asking for anything more than a chance to prove that I can be the business partner you deserve. Whatever happened between us personally, I've always believed in your vision and your abilities. I'd like to help you build something even bigger, if you'll let me." I didn't give him an answer that night, but I agreed to think about it. Over the next few weeks, I found myself considering the possibility more seriously. Elena's Kitchen had reached a point where expansion beyond San Antonio would require significant expertise in markets I didn't know. Well, David's experience in New York, combined with his culinary skills and business acumen, could be exactly what we needed. More importantly, I realized that I had finally reached a place where I could consider a partnership from a position of strength rather than need. I wasn't looking for someone to save me or validate my worth. I was looking for someone who could help me build something even better than what I had already achieved. After a month of consideration, I called David. "I have a proposal," I said. "Not a romantic proposal," I added quickly. "A business proposal." He laughed. "I'm listening." "I want to expand Elena's Kitchen into a restaurant group with locations in Austin, Houston, and eventually Dallas. I need a partner who understands fine dining, has connections in major markets, and can help me maintain quality while scaling up." That sounds like exactly what I want to do. There would be conditions. I retain majority ownership and final decision-making authority. This is my company, and I won't give up control to anyone again. I wouldn't expect you to. And we keep our personal relationship completely separate from our professional relationship. If we're going to work together, it has to be as business partners, not as EXEs trying to recapture something that didn't work out. Agreed. And if you ever patronize me or undermine my authority with staff or investors, the partnership ends immediately. Jennifer, I've spent 4 years watching you build something incredible from nothing. The last thing I would do is undermine you. 6 months later, David moved back to San Antonio as Chief Culinary Officer of Elena's Kitchen Restaurant Group. Our first expansion location opened in Austin 9 months later, followed by Houston 6 months after that. The partnership was everything I had hoped for professionally. David's culinary expertise elevated our food quality to new heights, while his connections in major markets opened doors that would have taken me years to open alone. More importantly, he respected my leadership and authority in a way that felt natural and supportive rather than threatening. Working together again also allowed us to rebuild our personal relationship slowly and carefully. We weren't trying to recapture our past romance. We were building a new friendship based on mutual respect and shared professional goals. By the end of our 4th year, Elena's Kitchen Restaurant Group had 6 locations across Texas, employed 280 people, and generated over $18 million in annual revenue. We had been featured in Food and Wine magazine, won numerous local and regional awards, and were being courted by investors interested in national expansion. The moment that completed my personal journey came during our 5th anniversary celebration. We were hosting a gala event at our original San Antonio location, with food critics, local celebrities, and business leaders in attendance. I was giving a speech about our growth and success when I spotted familiar faces in the crowd. My father, my mother, and Alex were sitting at a table near the back, listening intently. After the speech, Dad approached me with tears in his eyes. "Mija, I am so proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "What you've built here is beyond anything I ever imagined possible." "Thank you, Dad. I want you to know that I tell everyone about your success. The grocery store clerk, the mailman, people at church, I tell them all about my daughter who built a restaurant empire from nothing." It was the recognition I had craved my entire life, but receiving it now felt different than I had expected. I was grateful for his pride, but I no longer needed it to feel validated. "I love you, Dad," I said, "and I'm glad we found our way back to each other." Later that evening, Alex pulled me aside. "I have something to tell you," he said. "I'm getting married next month. Congratulations. That's wonderful news. I wanted to ask you something. Would you cater the wedding? I know it's a big ask, but it would mean everything to Michelle and me to have Elena's Kitchen handle our wedding dinner." I was touched by the request, but also amused by the irony. The brother who had inherited a restaurant business was asking his sister to cater his wedding because she had built a better one. "Of course," I said. "I'd be honored. And there's something else. I've been working on some graphic design projects for restaurants. Logo design, menu design, that kind of thing. I was wondering if you might need any design work for the restaurant group." I smiled. "Actually, we're about to redesign our marketing materials for the national expansion. If you're interested, I'd love to see your portfolio." The wedding was beautiful, and the catering was flawless. Watching Alex and Michelle celebrate their new life together, I felt genuine happiness for them. More importantly, I felt like we had finally found a way to be siblings without the competitive dynamic that had poisoned our relationship for so many years. As the evening wound down, Alex gave a toast that surprised everyone. "I want to thank my sister Jennifer for making this celebration possible," he said, raising his glass. "5 years ago, I inherited a restaurant business that I wasn't qualified to run. It failed because I wasn't smart enough or hardworking enough to maintain what my sister had built. But watching Jennifer create Elena's Kitchen from nothing taught me that success isn't about what you inherit, it's about what you build with your own hands and your own vision." He turned to look at me. "Jennifer, you're not just my sister. You're my inspiration. You showed me that failure isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a better one." The room erupted in applause, and I found myself crying tears of joy for the first time in years. Today, Elena's Kitchen Restaurant Group operates 12 locations across Texas, Louisiana, and New Mexico. We employ over 500 people and generate $45 million in annual revenue. We're planning our first California location for next year and have been approached about franchising opportunities internationally. David and I have rebuilt our relationship into something stronger and more sustainable than what we had before. We're not just business partners. We're best friends who happen to run a company together. We've learned to support each other's dreams without losing ourselves in the process. My father and I have weekly dinners now, where we talk about business, family, and life. He's become one of my most trusted advisors, and I value his perspective in a way I never could when I was desperately seeking his approval. Alex has built a successful graphic design business that specializes in restaurant branding. He's designed logos and marketing materials for several of our locations, and his work has been featured in design magazines. He's found his calling in creative work, and he's much happier than he ever was trying to run restaurants. Most importantly, I've learned that success isn't about proving other people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. The little girl who spent summers learning recipes in my grandmother's kitchen grew up to honor those recipes in restaurants across the Southwest. The teenager who worked dinner rushes while her brother played video games grew up to employ hundreds of people and serve millions of customers. The young woman who was told that business was a man's world built a company that proves otherwise every single day. If you've ever been told that your dreams don't match other people's expectations for your life, I hope my story encourages you to pursue those dreams anyway. If you've ever been passed over for opportunities you deserved, I hope you remember that you can create your own opportunities. And if you've ever been told that you don't belong in a man's world, I hope you remember that the world belongs to people who work hard, treat others well, and never stop believing in their own capabilities regardless of gender. The best revenge isn't destroying what other people built. The best revenge is building something so much better that the comparison speaks for itself. 5 years ago, my father told me I wouldn't understand the pressures and responsibilities of business ownership. Today, I understand them better than he ever did, because I learned them through experience rather than inheritance. Elena's Kitchen isn't just my business. It's proof that when you combine passion, knowledge, hard work, and determination, you can build something extraordinary. And no one can ever take that away from you, because you built it yourself. But more than that, it's proof that the most beautiful endings come not from getting revenge, but from finding the courage to build something better than what you lost. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about turning setbacks into comebacks. And remember, the world needs what you have to offer, regardless of what anyone else thinks about your potential. Your success is your best revenge, but your happiness is your greatest victory.